Hello there, Baka here, and welcome to the first in my series of basic DCS instructional lessons, the purpose of which is to explain the basics of simulated airplane flying. I am a FAA certified flight instructor with over 1,500 hours logged in instructing people to fly in real airplanes. I also have over 2 decades of experience with flight sims of all kinds. So I am taking my experience and knowledge and trying to pass it on for anyone who wants to get into or become even better with sim flying, specifically DCS. The series is designed to not be a technical description. Instead, it is meant to teach you in simple terms what to do and not to do without getting into the science of why. I'll save that for other videos. Because while knowing the why of things does make you even better, you have to start somewhere. And falling asleep or getting bored partway through the lesson does you no good. So some of this might seem like very basic concepts, but without mastery of these fundamentals, one's skills will never be as good as possible. So bear with me if it seems like I am saying something obvious. There's a reason for it. Now, the purpose of this video is to teach someone who has little or no experience with flying and get them airborne. It's not done specifically for any one airplane model. Instead, I will be covering the core fundamentals to flying any fixed-wing aircraft. To anyone who has been simming for a while already and thinks they've got flying figured out, if you have never had any real primary instruction in the fundamentals of flying, you will most likely find something useful to learn here to make you even better. First, let's real quick cover the controls. When I do these videos, I will often put this display on. It shows how I am positioning the controls for your reference. First, there is the flight stick. Pulling it towards you pitches the nose of the airplane upwards. Where pushing it away will pitch the nose down. By moving the stick left or right, the plane rolls in that direction. The throttle controls power. Forward for more power, aft for less. Then there are the rudder pedals that yaw the nose left or right. Now here is my first big piece of advice, and one I was given when I was a very young sim pilot. Always use gentle and smooth inputs whenever possible. You do not control airplanes well by yanking the controls around. Even in combat, it's not about pulling hard, it's about pulling the right amount. There are times in combat where brisk and severe movements are necessary, but those times will be less than 1% of the time you are flying, and they still must be controlled. Most of my stick inputs use less than 50% of the total travel of the stick. While watching me, note that I use small and smooth inputs and learn to do the same. Now quickly, some basics about flying. When an airplane is pointed upwards, it climbs. However, the more it points up, the slower it goes. Whereas pointing below the horizon allows it to speed up, obviously losing altitude as well. These effects increase the further above or below the horizon that the nose is pointed. This is why climbs are normally accompanied with power addition and descents of power reduction. This might seem like an obvious statement to some, but it just needed to be said. The most important foundation to flying airplanes is understanding the concept of having a good sight picture. This is simply the idea of looking outside at the relation of the airplane and the horizon and knowing what's happening. Like seeing the horizon above the dashboard and knowing that it looks like level flight, or the horizon's just about at the dashboard and knowing that you're in a climb. This ties into the concept attitude plus power equals performance. Attitude just means the plane's current pitch and bank, whereas power is the throttle, and performance is a way of saying the resulting action. I will use climbing as my example. If I pitch the nose of the airplane up about 5 to 15 degrees, depending on the airplane, or maybe just put the dashboard close to the horizon, and set full power, I know the airplane will climb. Specifically, it will climb at about the same speed every time with that setting. It doesn't have to be precise, just close to get the predictable results. This concept of knowing roughly how to get a certain performance from sight picture alone is really supposed to be a subconscious one. The whole idea is to make flying intuitive and simplifies the multitasking load for a pilot. Everything that simplifies your workload makes you a better pilot. So the skill you want to develop is knowing instantly, just by looking outside and seeing that sight picture, knowing the attitude of the plane, you already know what the plane is doing or will do. This means that there are plenty of times you don't even have to check the gauges. Because if I am trying to avoid being shot while maneuvering the plane into position for attack, while arming a weapon, while trying not to hit a mountain, I do not have time to worry about exact numbers. Instead, I can check the sight picture, often just with my peripheral vision, and I know the plane is doing what I need while not exceeding any limitations, and focus my attention back on those other things going on. Relying less on gauges and more on sight picture to perform climbs, turns, descents in any airplane is the first step to being a good pilot. That being said, gauges are still important. However, they should be used to confirm or refine what you already know by just looking outside. You will notice as you fly around that the nose does not always stay put in the new positions that you put it in. When you're climbing or even just trying to fly straight and level, often the nose drifts up or down from wherever you set it on its own. You could try to hold it in place the whole time, but honestly, that's too much work, and muscle control is not that reliable over time or while multitasking. This is where trim comes in. Trim is a pilot's best friend. It is incredibly important. If you are not using trim, you are making flying a lot harder than it needs to be. Think of trim as resetting the centering point of the control stick, or in reality, trim holds the controls in a new position for you, and you should use it almost every time you change attitude or power. In many airplanes, trim is controlled with a 4-position hat switch on the top of the stick. The best way to use trim is this. Put the airplane to your desired sight picture, hold it there, and then start adding in trim to relieve the control pressures that you are holding. As you add in trim, you release the stick little by little back towards center in order to keep the attitude that you are trying to hold. Eventually, you could take your hand off the stick completely and the airplane stays put. At first, this process takes some time and effort to get used to doing properly, but with practice, it becomes second nature. The key is that you always hold your sight picture with the stick, then relieve that pressure with the trim. You do not want to fly the plane with the trim. Planes turn by banking or rolling in the direction to turn and adding a little bit of back pressure on the stick. This will pull the plane through the turn. The more bank, the faster the turn, but also means more pullback is required on the stick. There is another problem with increasing bank, but I will get to that in another lesson when I talk about stalls. If you pull too much or too little while in a turn, the plane will climb or descend while turning. And then we have airspeed changes like we talked about before. And frankly, it's just poor airplane control. So for a good balance in a high performance airplane like these military jets, a bank angle of about 30 to 60 degrees will usually do the trick for a non-combat turn, and are much easier to keep under control than steeper bank turns are. Note that you can also use trim to hold you in a stable turn. Even if you don't trim completely hands off, a little bit might help you so you don't have to hold as much pressure. Keep in mind, turns don't usually last too long, and that all the trim you add for the turn would then have to be taken back out once you are flying straight and level again. Alright, so here's some stuff you can do to practice and refine these basic starter skills. First, just start a free flight in the plane of your choice. Free flights can usually be found under the instant action selection on the main menu. Once you're in there, just experiment. Learn how pitch, power, airspeed, altitude, bank all interact with each other. Find out if I were to do blank, then blank happens. And then just get comfortable with all that. Set a climb sight picture with a full power setting. Trim to keep it at that attitude hands off and see what the resulting performance is. Remember what the result of that sight picture was. Then try making small adjustments to increase and decrease your airspeed in a climb by 10 knots and see what each looks like. Roll those sight pictures in your mind. Be able to fairly consistently hit the same climb airspeed of your choosing just by setting your sight picture and holding it. Be able to do the same with descents. Set a cruise descent, then try increasing and decreasing the airspeed in the descent by 10 knot increments. Practice rolling into a turn of about 45 degrees and adding enough back pressure to keep the plane at the same altitude throughout the entire turn. Then roll level, keeping altitude, and into another turn until you can reasonably keep altitude the whole time within maybe 100 feet or so. It might seem basic, but if you can't do this simple maneuver well, then other flying skills will suffer. Take the time to master this, and then branch out to doing the same with steeper bank angles. And finally, and maybe most importantly, get comfortable with setting trim. It's something you should do multiple times every single flight. This is an invaluable skill, so make it a habit now to use it frequently. Alright, that's it for this first lesson. Some basic stuff I talked about, but we have to walk before we run. Next time things will get a little bit more intense as I start talking about stalls and spins. Also, if there's a topic you want me to talk about, or if there's something from this video you want me to explain in more detail, let me know in the comments. I do check them regularly. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something useful out of it. Thank you so very much for watching. Stay safe out there.